So Kay Beckermann is an assistant professor at the Minnesota State University Moorhead School of Communications and Journalism. She teaches courses in advertising, public relations, and social media campaigns. Prior to her time in academia, she spent 20 years working in public relations, incorporating social media into integrated campaigns since the early 2000s. So very successful, very experienced. Thank you for being on with us today, Kay.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I was telling Abigail earlier, it's always hard to follow Karen because she's so energetic and she's so fun to listen to. And I was taking notes like crazy. So I was really excited to listen to what she had to say. I was in a meeting earlier this spring on Zoom, and she was participating in the meeting, and I felt like I had met a rock star. I think a lot of faculty have had that experience when you meet another academic that's been published and is quite popular. So that was kind of fun for me to do. So let me just share my screen. I'm gonna turn that off. Okay. Do you all see the ProfCon logo, hopefully? I guess I'm asking that. I can't see anybody because everything's turned off. So I hope everything is on. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So we are going to talk about social media cartography. And it's just really creating a course map for improved instruction. And the reason I did this is because like Abigail said, I have 20 years experience in the field. And then I quit my job and went back to school and got my PhD. And so I'm relatively new at teaching, and I found that I was just winging it a lot. And I wasn't always sure how to best prepare for a course. And so that's what I did. I took a short course on how to do this, and I found some really good ideas, and I applied it to my social media campaigns course, and I found it to be exceedingly helpful. So as we get started, would you mind just popping in the chat where you're coming from? Are you teaching? Kind of a little bit about, just so I can get an idea of where we are all at academically. Oh, high school, that's cool. Yeah, good deal. Yeah, Krista, teaching for 8 years, you don't always feel prepared. I understand that. Texas A&M. I am trying to remember. I know an instructor there, and I'm trying to remember her name. I feel terrible. Great. So as we are talking today, thank you so much for putting that information in there. Just let me know if you have any questions. I don't know if, Abigail, if there's a certain way you do this, but I do not mind if you just pop up and ask a question as we're talking. And we will be talking about some of your courses later on in this session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to have a course in mind, because we'll be talking about learning objectives, and we'll be talking about how we can create activities and assessments that meet these learning objectives. So kind of think about that as I'm talking about things, and then as we discuss later, we can do this. So I see prepping for a course a little bit like planning a trip. You have a destination in mind, and you kind of have a vague idea of how you're going to get there, but nothing is really for certain. You don't know exactly how you're going to get there. And you might be okay with that. Some people like the adventure of not knowing how they're going to get there, until you realize you also have to bring a class load of students along with you on this trip. And that gets to be a little bit horrifying because sometimes even during the best of days, it's like herding cats. And so how do you best prepare these students? And so in the past, I think I mentioned I've winged it. I spent my time going, what should we talk about? Okay, we'll talk about that. Because I knew how to run a social media campaign, which is the topic of the course I teach, but I didn't always know how to teach it. I didn't always know how to share my knowledge with the students. And so winging it wasn't really the best idea. I started to create a course map. And Through this course map, I was able to plan an entire semester of assessment and activities. And so I knew that by the time the end of the semester hit, my students had a clear direction from start to finish, and they reached their destination in one piece, and they knew everything that they needed to know as we went through the course. So what is a course map? I just pulled this from the University of Florida because I thought this was a really good explanation. It is just simply a detailed plan. It helps everyone involved with the course understand what to expect and how you're going to meet those expectations. I thought that was great. And similarly, also from the University of Florida, it helps instructors align the course goals with the assignments, assessments, and activities for the course, and ensure they are an effective way to help students meet learning objectives. The bolded part is what I want to pay attention to. You are aligning the course goals with the assessments, assignments, and activities. Because sometimes you might have an activity that you think, you know what, the students are going to love this. This will be so fun. It does not necessarily mean it meets any learning objectives or helps the students advance in any way, shape, or form. Does it mean you don't have to do it? No, not always. Sometimes a meaningless activity is really fun and a good way to relieve some tension, but it's always good to have all of these activities and assignments meet your learning objectives. So through the creation of a course map, we are going to learn how to take every possible idea that we have and structure it so that students are having a coordinated and curated learning experience. With the course map, as I mentioned before, I was sort of winging it quite a bit of time. And so what I was focusing on at that point is what I was going to talk about. And that's not really student-centered learning. It does not help our students. And so through creating a course map, I was focusing on how students learn information. And it has been proven through some of the academic studies that I've read that students really benefit from this preparation and planning on your part and focusing on how they will learn the information. So the first step is just defining the learning objectives for your course. Now, a lot of times your course is already developed and you have the learning objectives. I know that was my case. The learning objectives had been created before I started. And so I was just able to build off of those learning objectives. So for example, this is one learning objective that I have. Develop an awareness and understanding of the nature of the communication transaction occurring in a social media campaign. That's great. That's a great learning objective. It doesn't really tell me anything, but that is a learning objective. And as I found, interestingly enough, as I started creating my first course map, I realized that some of my learning objectives were overly broad and I didn't always know how to measure them. So another learning objective was develop proficiency. Well, what's proficiency? That was never defined. And so as I went through this course map creation, I realized that several of my learning objectives do need to change. And I don't know about your universities or your high schools, but sometimes changing a learning objective is an arduous process. And so I know for me, I need a lot of material to back up my reasoning for changing the learning objectives. And so again, that's where a course map can really help, is you can say, I've gone through all of these materials and this is how I would like to change the learning objectives. Personally, I would like to make them a little bit more active instead of just develop an awareness, maybe talk about how I would develop an awareness. But anyway, that's a whole new session, right? So let's talk about the course map. So the first step is looking at your learning objectives. Here is just one learning objective that I have in my social media campaigns course. The second step is review your learning materials and then apply them to your learning objectives. So for social media campaigns, I use Karen's book right here. This is not like to sell her book. I used several different materials throughout my time here, and I felt like for our course and our course objectives, this book and then her portfolio I felt that these were the best fit for our class. It best fit our needs. And so for us, perfect. For other people, it may not be the best book for you. And I also, I did use the Stukent Mimic Social, and that was also very, very fun to create in this particular class. So anyway, you review your learning materials and you apply them to the learning objectives. So again, here's the same learning objective. And then I made sub-objectives because it helped me understand what I was trying to do, what goals I was trying to reach. And so I put here, compare and contrast social media roles and their communication objectives. And so where I found this information, compare and contrast social media roles and their objectives, is I would go through Karen's book, and a lot of times at the very beginning of a chapter, I'm just reaching one at random, she has the learning objectives at the very beginning of the chapter. So I would look at those. I went through chapter by chapter and I thought, do these learning objectives that she puts in her book meet any of the objectives I have in my course? And so I'd go through and I'd say, oh, okay, that does sort of work with it. And then I would, go through her book and I would think about it and I would apply what I needed to. The second step that I did is I applied Bloom's taxonomy to each of these sub-objectives, because that makes it more interesting, I felt, for the students. And it's also more active. So I don't know about you, but I tend to just fall back on the same activities all the time. Let's have a discussion, And so by using Bloom's taxonomy, I was able to think of different ways and to break out of some of the ruts that we all get into with teaching and think about some different ways to learn. Will this work? Yes. For those of you that are not familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, it's a lot of different categories that help students learn. So some of the most basic categories are like remembering and understanding. And so as you're planning your lesson, you think about if you want them to remember or recall something that you would just talk about, that means that they're at the beginning of that learning process. As you proceed through the categories, you get to create, which is really more of the advanced categories. And so that means your students are really showing to you, they are demonstrating their knowledge through creating, in this case, a social media campaign, for example. So definitely look through the Bloom's taxonomy. I found it to be incredibly helpful as I created my course map. I just need to find my slides again. Okay. And then also with my sub-objectives, I have my Bloom's taxonomy, and then I noted where I found this particular information, because I forget easily where I found things. So for this, I found it in Freeburg, chapter 4, page 73. Definition of key social media roles. So that helps me as I start creating my lesson plans. I can come here and I can go, oh yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. So let me show you my learning objectives and the different sub-objectives that I created before we go on to the course map. Let me make this a little bit larger for you. So again, we have the text here that the students are using, and then I highlighted the different learning objectives. So I have 5 of them for this class. And then the sub-objectives, these help me understand, what we are going to do in order to meet this objective. And then again, I have the different Bloom's taxonomy categories, and then what chapter or location that I can find this information in my learning materials. Right now, they are in no particular order. They are just, as I went through the learning materials, I plopped it down there. And when I was done, it's about a page and a half. And I'm happy to share any of this with all of you. I'm happy to share this. So I had all of this information that I could then apply to my course map. Step 3 is simply create a calendar. So this is kind of just jot down if you're working in a quarterly system or a semester system, just jot down when you think you will be discussing each of these different topics, because that will also help you as you create the course map, build on some of these things. I'm just going to look at the chat. It looks like we have some information there. Let's see. Can we know the name of the book? Yes, this is Social Media for Strategic Communication by Karen Freeberg. Oh yes, Abigail put it down there because she's amazing and fast. What's the difference between this and a course syllabus? Dave, that is a great question. So the course syllabus is really what you share with the students. It's, I always say the course syllabus is like a contract between me and the students, and it explains, expectations. The course map is really what you keep for your own planning purposes. It helps you develop your lesson plans. And it'll make sense here in a minute. And of course, if any student said to me, can I look at your course map? I'd be like, sure, fine, I don't care, that'd be great. But it's really more of helping you to plan. And then the course syllabus is more for the students. So the calendar, we all know how to make the calendar. I'm not going to talk much more about that. So then you start planning. I'm kind of a nerd. I love creating course maps. I have created 2.5 for my courses. I have 4 courses each semester. I've done 2.5. So we need to start planning the course map. This is essentially what a course map looks like. You have your module title. So for week 2, we jump into chapter 1, Intro to Social Media. What are the module learning objectives? So you start talking, this is my module, the learning objective is number 3, and the sub-objective is A. Explain the main considerations for using social media strategically. So instructional materials, the students prior to class will need to read Freeberg chapter 1. The learning activities, I'll prepare a lecture using social media strategically, and then we will do some exercises in the class. We will watch a Gary Vaynerchuk video about self-awareness, and then there's an exercise that they need to complete based on that video. And I have, you see it says workbook page 2. Again, this is from Karen's book, Portfolio Building Activities in Social Media. It's a great workbook if you need some ideas. Not all of my activities are based off of this, but it's a good starting point if you have the opportunity to use some of these. And in this case, I do not have any assessment activities, but if I did, I would indicate in this column the assessment activities. So I'm going to show you my completed course map. Again, I'll make it a little bit larger for you. What I think is funny is I put the draft watermark, and then as I've used this for one complete semester, I realized it will always be a draft. It will never be completed because social media is always changing, and the way you want to work with students is always changing. And then of course, I believe Karen just released a new book, a new version of her book. So then at some point you'll update this course map as well if you decide to use her particular textbook again. So you see here, table of contents. We start out with the course information, just a description and the course objectives, and then the course map. And then you'll see here, I have the learning activities separated by week. So it's easy for me to simply go week by week and see which learning activities we are going to do. And then I have the assessment activities. So what will I be grading students on with each week? We don't always have something to grade. Sometimes we do. And then of course, at the end, I have appendices where we have some different rubrics, the Mimics Student Social Grader and peer evaluations, because they do have a group project that they work on. You'll notice here, I do not have exams listed. In this particular class, I do not necessarily rely on exams because I feel like their hands-on activities and their final project will tell me more about their demonstration of knowledge, how much they are learning versus just an exam where they can just sort of like regurgitate information. This would, Krista, this would save a tremendous amount of time during the semester. Yes, oh my gosh, Krista. I almost cried because it was such a beautiful thing to do this, because I had everything ready to go. And like I said, I'd only been teaching for 2 years as a full-time instructor with 4 classes each semester. And I had everything ready to go, and it was so beautiful, and I highly recommend it. It took a lot of time to get it started. I mean, this is a lot of pages. It's 50 pages almost. And so it does take some time to get this created, but once you're done, it will save you a great amount of time during the semester. So let's just go look at a course map. What does this look like? So you'll see here I have the description of the course and the objectives. A lot of the assignments come from Karen Freeberg's book, so I am not trying to claim that I created all of these assignments on my own. And for those of you that are up for tenure or you need to show what you've been doing, this is also a really good document that you can share with your dean or the head of your department. So you see here we have our course map with the titles, the learning objectives, instructional materials, and so on. This is the one that I showed on the previous slides, and this is where it helped me to have the sub objectives, because then I can say, so for objective 3A, this is how I will meet that objective. For objective 3B, this is how I will meet that objective. And again, this is also where Bloom's taxonomy is really helpful, because some students are visual learners. And so to say, let's visually describe social media, for some of them, that is where they'll shine. It's a very basic thing for them to do, but I used this, I think 3 or 4 times throughout the semester, and they loved it. I was really curious what they would come up with, and students really had some great ideas. You'll see my little carrots here. They just mean I need to put it on D2L, which is our learning management system. So that's just sort of a note to myself. I have footnotes or endnotes, and so that is where, to save space, that's where I put the URL for those particular videos. And you'll see too that I leave myself certain notes on the side, make this 2 days, allow time to discuss things. Maybe this is a good time for Ben Saylor to come talk about SMART goals. Ben Saylor is an alumni, and he's currently working with CoSchedule. And so he's been very active in helping come in and work with all of us. I created this particular course map to be for a traditional face-to-face class. Even though we were not meeting face-to-face, that's what I was thinking of doing. So that's what I had in my head, because I was really hoping we will go back to face-to-face, which we will in the fall. So I had to be kind of creative during this past semester in the spring. How can I use some of these different ideas in an online format? Because we were only meeting once a week on Zoom, and then students were working on their own the rest of the week. So we got to be kind of creative. Just going to quickly look at the chat. Do I distinguish between learning objectives and learning outcomes? The learning objectives do eventually reach the learning outcomes. That's the way I understand it, Arla, and I am happy to have you tell me that I'm wrong. I really don't mind, because I feel like if they are learning these objectives that we set, then they will be meeting the learning outcomes. That's the way I understand this, and that's the way I plan it. But again, if I'm wrong, please, you can let me know. Rhonda, you do this course map. Oh, as a team, what a beautiful thing that would be as a team. I am the only one here with this particular class, so I did it on my own. I do have my superhero power is that I'm married to an instructional designer, which is super helpful. He still makes me submit tickets and get in line with everybody else, but it was helpful for me because he would help me kind of go through things, and I could talk things out with him. And so that was very helpful. So again, every week I have a course map planned. I do not have it planned out day by day because sometimes you might meet 3 days a week, other semesters you meet 2 days a week. It's just this week, this is what we'll talk about. Sometimes what we're talking about lasts 2 weeks, sometimes it lasts 1 week, so on and so forth. And again, you'll see I don't have the exams in here because I focus more on the hands-on work that they're doing. I'm just trying to get through these. Okay, so let me look at the chat real quick. Yes, you also do that, Kristen. That is great. It is a lot of time and it is 100% worth it. So the learning activities, I have my course map. I know exactly what we're going to be doing. And then I start working on the different activities. And because I don't want to forget what I'm doing, I have everything spelled out in this course map. And so we have, week 2, the self-awareness exercise. I have the learning objective that we are going to be meeting. I have the location. We're going to do this in class. Sometimes it's homework, sometimes it's prep. So it's in class. And so we'll watch Gary Vee's self-awareness video. You answer these different questions. And then we do it again at the end of the semester to see what we've learned. This is how we'll describe the visual description of social media. How are we going to do this? And what's nice about this is, social media is both a science and an art. I did get a lot of it right here from Karen's book. I was able to take what I had right here on my screen and put it on D2L, our learning management system. So I was not reinventing the wheel at any point. I was able to create all of this and get it set up. And that was incredibly helpful. And again, by the time the semester started, I was ready to go. All I had to do was, tweak some things, maybe prep some lectures that I didn't have ready yet. And it's really great. And then as I went through the semester, I did make notes on my lesson plans about what worked and what didn't work. We've all done that. Just going to scroll up real quick so I can get to the table of contents. So we have all the activities, the assessment activities. So this is where we start grading students. How are we going to give them a score to measure what they're learning? So again, learning objective 3A, how many points is this? Which rubric are we using? And the location, of course, is homework for this particular one. And so it's just a discussion question. I can put this discussion question on D2L and students go ahead and do their thing at this point. We introduce Hootsuite Academy, the Mimic social simulation, and then just all of the different assessments for the whole semester. It's a lot, right? Yes, this probably would work very well with Canvas. And probably I've worked a little bit with Blackboard, and I think this would work really well with Blackboard too. I don't know what other, yes. I do not have this document as a Google. Abigail, what's the best way to share the document? I am happy to share it.
Whatever format I guess works best for you, but when we post the recordings and your slides, I can include that as a file or a link for people to check out. You could, I guess, just leave like your headings and stuff and take that out. That'd be a great little template for everybody.
Okay, I will add this as a file right now. I'm sorry to take this moment to do it, but if I don't do it, I'll forget. You all understand, right? I meant to have it ready. I'm sorry about that. The nice thing is you can use this for, semester, each semester. It looks like you should have availability to this course map now. You can always send me an email if you have any questions about it. And I'd be happy to send it to you in that way as well. So, and again, we'll just scroll down to the end. I have my end notes here. These are the different URLs that we're using, or maybe I felt, I wanted to make sure that students knew I was using certain images legally and that I was not stealing images from the web. So, like I said, this is 50 pages. I find it to be very helpful. And I will definitely be inserting these into my 10-year portfolio when that time comes. Yes, I'm happy to share this work. I also have, and I will send it to you at the end of this. I did make a Google link for the template, the course map template. And so I can just send that to you as well. It's not that hard, it's just a table, but it's nice to have. So the finishing touches, this is the last step, the finishing touches of your course map. Have a colleague review your course map. It sounds like some of you are working in groups. That's great. I had my husband help me with it, but we have here on campus a whole group of instructional designers, and they love to do this. My husband, I preferred him to not review it because I felt like he was too close to it. So he had a colleague review it, and she responded with a lot of excellent suggestions because she was able to say, I feel like this activity actually meets this objective better instead of the one that you listed, so I felt that would be really helpful. And it was. I took a lot of her suggestions. And as we all know, it's just so much better to have a second set of eyes. I had my students. I was totally honest with them on day one. I said, I have a whole new plan for this course. This is the first time I'm teaching it with this plan. Let me know what you think. And so sometimes if I felt maybe an assignment might be clear to me, they were happy to tell me when it was not clear to them. Maybe I wasn't sure if it was very clear, so I really worked with the students and they really felt some ownership to it. And as we all know, they are happy to tell you when something does not make them happy. They will let you know. And so I took the student evaluations on the assignments and the activities, and I incorporated those evaluations into the future semesters. So I made note of it and I will use that in the future. So I really appreciated their input. You will always be revising this. Like I said before, everything's always changing. We are always revising. And then give yourself time for thoughtful prep. So, it takes time to create a good course map. And so you don't feel like you have to rush through it. Don't try to finish it all in one day. Give yourself time, set aside a couple of weeks or an hour every day for a couple of weeks and just really think about each chapter. What do you want to do? What do you want students to learn? How is this meeting the learning objectives that you want them to meet? And so don't rush it. And I think you'll find that you have an excellent course map by the end of the semester. And then the reward, of course, is a fully developed class in which students successfully complete all their learning objectives, and you can celebrate. I did find, the end of the semester, we call it the student evaluation on teaching, student review of instruction. That's what it's called, student review of instruction. They appreciated this. They really felt that they learned quite a bit of information in this class. And then when I could look at past classes when I was not as prepared for it, I could see the difference. And so I knew that taking the time to make this course map really led to a more successful class in the end. I'm not sure what time it is. Do we have time to talk about what some other teachers are doing or if they have any questions?
Yeah, usually our Q&A will start at like 9:40. You'll have like 10 minutes for that, but we are 9:35 Mountain
Okay.
Time. So we have plenty of time to do some questions, maybe some conversations if you want somebody to come on stage.
Yeah. Does anybody have maybe a learning objective or a class in which they would like to get started? Or maybe reach out to other colleagues? Well, you all did have good questions during the course of this kind of quick presentation. I talk fast. That's one thing that my students are usually yelling at me about. Does anybody have any questions just on how to just get started? Just that first step, getting these materials ready and looking at your learning objectives?
Yeah, Kelly had a question about which comes first, the resource in the textbook or the learning objectives.
That's a good question, Kelly. I think it depends on where you are at. Are you at a high school or a university? Does she say?
I'm at a university, a state university,
Okay.
and we have a ton of autonomy, like too much autonomy sometimes. Like it would be nice to have some more guidelines in some cases, but so I basically have the freedom to choose whatever book I want and, update the learning objectives as I want. And I've taught most of my courses for 4 years, but and am now finally getting to the point where I'm like trying to tweak them to make them better and starting to redevelop them. And so this is a good time to kind of bring in a tool like this. But yeah, so I typically what I've done is I've chosen the textbook that I think looks the best and then pulled my learning objectives from there versus having learning objectives and then trying to find the resources to match it.
Yeah, in my case, the learning objectives were already there. And so then I was able to find the resource. I did go through several resources before I landed on Karen's textbook. And it just depends on the topics of your course and the objectives and what you want your students to learn. So for me, yeah, it's sort of like chicken or the egg, right? Which comes first? For me, it was the objectives, but I kind of want to change them. And if I change them too much, that might mean I end up changing my materials too. And the nice thing, I forgot to mention this too, as you are going through this semester and you've got your course map, say you're looking at Adweek and something, or social media today, and something really pops out at you and you say, you know what, that meets this learning objective. You can easily put that into the course map, and maybe maybe you missed it for this particular semester, but you can then incorporate it into your course map for future semesters. Really,
yeah, that's great. I think it will also help me like cut stuff that I've thrown in there that has accumulated over the years that really doesn't fit. And I just thought it was cool. So I probably have a lot of fat that I can trim from the courses if I really focus on what it does to achieve those learning objectives.
Yeah, and if you're teaching long enough, it might be time to drop MySpace. I don't know that people use that.
Right.
But now, like, I'm trying to figure out, how do I really incorporate TikTok, for example? Karen's book doesn't have anything with TikTok, and that's fine, but it's becoming more and more popular with students. It's something that we can't ignore. So that's where you can look at your objectives in the course map and figure out where can you put in learning about TikTok, and you can put those materials into the course map in the appropriate area. So that's really handy to have.
Thank you for answering that one. We had a question coming from Shane. I'm struggling with developing and fine-tuning rubrics so the objective and the measurement is clear and the transparency for the students. Any suggestions?
I hate rubrics. I love them and I hate them, right?
Same. I have a love-hate relationship with them.
Yeah.
But the university I work for is all about making the rubrics as transparent to the students as possible. And especially how we use it within Canvas.
Yes. Yeah, rubrics are, I have taken courses on rubric development, and I feel like I can be teaching for 50 years and I'll still be trying to develop the perfect rubric. And, I should look back at my notes and see, did my colleague respond to my rubrics? Did she say, are these meeting the appropriate objectives? And Shane, thank you for bringing it up, because maybe that's something I should also look at as well. And if you ever want to just reach out, I'm happy to review some of your rubrics or work with you on those. That's not a problem at all. One thing I've started doing with rubrics too, and I don't know how many of you experience this, especially with an online course. Everything's been online this past semester. I call it the feedback sandwich. And so, I'll fill out the rubric, and then in the feedback area, I'll be like, this is great, Shane. This is a wonderful essay. And then I'll say, you know, maybe proofread next time because there were a lot of typos and you kind of missed the point on this and this is why. And then I'll finish again with a positive comment about, you know, but you really demonstrated your knowledge about ABC when you brought in this particular author, blah, blah, blah. So for the students that are reading those feedback sandwiches, I think they are understanding what I'm trying to say in the rubric more. But again, when we were meeting all face-to-face or all online, like we did this last semester, I don't always know if students are reading those. I don't know if they're reading my feedback. But I think that can help me as I'm writing that feedback, kind of evaluate, am I helping them meet these objectives through the rubric? So that's one way to consider it. I'm sorry, I don't have like a really nice magic wand for you, Shane, to make that easier.
Oh, that's okay. I'm totally taking you up on the offer. I will be reaching out to you with my rubrics because I took it from the book using the set objectives that were out of the book, and then I wasn't crazy about the rubrics that were supplied.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I had to redesign based on more. I take more of a practical approach to, and most of the time it's like, did you or did you not do this? It wasn't a matter of like, how well did you do it? Did you do A, B, and C? Not just how well did you do it? And I find that that's been more successful for me as far as a rubric, but then leaving like that gap of points where then I could say, this is how well you did it compared to some other people, but I could really use some help making sure that I don't want to get stuck into the trap of, you know, did they cross all their T's and dot all their I's, and then that's an A. I don't like that approach either.
Yeah, no, I feel your pain. And you can see here on the screen, I have my email. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to work with you because I think it could benefit both of us. And if anyone else is interested, you know, just let us know.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you for asking that, Shane. One more question. Arla asked, I'm trying to figure out how to teach communication strategy versus technology and teaching the use of social media.
So you read that again. I'm sorry, Abigail.
Arla might have to come on to specify. I'm trying to figure out how to teach communication strategy versus technology and teaching the use of social media.
Oh, so really the strategy, Arla, the way I see that would be more of the messaging. Is that what you are coming to, and how to create the messages for the certain technologies? Is that what she's thinking?
Yeah, she said correct in the chat.
Okay. So how to develop the messages for the certain technologies. Actually, not to give it a total plug, but yes, Mimic, Stukent does have their, I used it. It was by Michelle Shirello. I think I said her name correctly. She actually has a good book on Stukent that will help you develop the best messages for the different technologies. So for Facebook versus Instagram versus LinkedIn, for example. And I don't know if she's updated with like TikTok and some of the other social media, the newer social media platforms. But yeah, because each message is similar, but they're all a little bit different depending on the platform. So yeah, you have a challenge, Arla, and I'm excited to see how that turns out for you. But maybe look at that Shirello book on Stukent. It might be really helpful for you. I did use it one semester and I did find some of that very helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, I included a chat down there. Michelle, she added, we were talking about it yesterday in her session. TikTok will be in the new update, so be on the lookout for that. And then One more question.
Mhm.
I know we had a lot of comments, like it's a lot of work doing this course map. Do you have like any tips? Does it get easier as the semesters pile up?
Does it ever get easier? Uh, it helped me, like, I just sort of got in the zone at one point. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. So I did get a lot of it done kind of in one sitting because I'm like, this is great, this is working, my kids are leaving me alone, I got it all done. But I do think that I also did this for a writing course that I teach, and I took my time with that one. And it probably took a month because, you get interrupted a lot and you kind of have to get back into the groove. But I feel that every second I put into creating the course map, the reward is 5 times greater because I come into the classroom so much more prepared and I know exactly how they are going to reach their destination by the end of the semester. And it also helps me if we are struggling with something. It helps me figure out how we can work on that and then maybe adjust something later in the semester because we need to take the extra time to really make sure that we're very clear on a certain topic before we carry on. So I personally have found it to be super helpful in so many different ways. So even if it takes you 2 months to get it done, it'll be worth it and you will cry with joy every day because you don't have to be reinventing the wheel all of the time. And you're still, I was still creating lectures 2 minutes before class, but at least I had more of an idea of the goals I was trying to reach when I was there.
Awesome. That's a really great point. And there's a lot of applications, even for your students, of just being prepared,
Mhm.
writing out those strategies for your campaigns and things like that when you enter the real world. So thank you for that. We have 4 more sessions coming up. I will be going into the session with Tim Marshall from Idea to Invoice, launching a fee-for-service campus consultancy. So don't miss out on that one. Thank you so much again, Kay. Really great
Thank
session.
you.
Don't forget that when we post her recordings, we will have her template and her slides in there. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.